As we roll south on State Route 43, looking straight out the windshield, the dense commercial sprawl of Streetsboro begins to fade in our rearview mirror. The landscape immediately outside the glass begins to stretch and breathe. The heavy, flat-roofed retail centers and massive intersections are giving way to a much softer, more ancient topography. You are looking at the rolling, forested hills and deep, shadow-filled ravines of northern Portage County. Take a look at the heavy clusters of oak, hickory, and maple trees crowding the shoulders of the two-lane highway. As we cruise down this long, straight stretch of Cleveland-Canton Road, we are actually tracing the exact path of the retreating glaciers from the last ice age. More than 10,000 years ago, a massive sheet of solid ice, perhaps a mile thick, sat directly on top of the ground we are rolling over right now. As the earth warmed and that unimaginable mass of ice began to melt and slide backward toward modern-day Lake Erie, it violently gouged the earth, leaving behind massive depressions. If you look carefully through the breaks in the trees on either side of the highway, you might catch the shimmering reflection of water. This specific area, sitting just north of the city of Kent, is dotted with deep natural bodies of water known as kettle lakes. They were formed when massive, towering chunks of glacial ice broke off the main sheet, became buried in the muddy earth, and slowly melted over centuries, creating perfectly contained, crystal-clear lakes surrounded by dense forest. For thousands of years, these lakes and the surrounding woods were vital hunting grounds for the indigenous peoples of the region, providing endless fresh water, fish, and game long before the first European settlers ever laid eyes on this valley. As the road continues to carry us south, the trees begin to pull back, revealing small, quiet residential neighborhoods and the subtle signs that we are approaching a much older, highly established settlement. We are descending slowly into the Cuyahoga River Valley, moving toward the city of Kent. The Cuyahoga River, which translates to the Crooked River, is the absolute defining geographical feature of this entire region. It snakes its way through the landscape, carving a deep, winding gorge that dictated exactly where and how this town would be built. As we cross the city limits, I want you to look past the modern street signs and the passing traffic and imagine this exact area in the 1830s. Back then, this town was not called Kent. It was called Franklin Mills. It was a rugged, booming, fiercely ambitious pioneer town built entirely around the raw, rushing kinetic energy of the Cuyahoga River. Wealthy investors from the East Coast looked at the massive waterfalls and the rushing current here and saw a gold mine. They built massive grist mills to grind wheat and massive sawmills to cut the ancient timber. But they also engaged in one of the most bizarre, disastrous economic bubbles in Ohio history. The early founders of Franklin Mills believed they could turn this freezing Midwestern river valley into a global silk-producing empire. They planted thousands of mulberry trees along the riverbanks and imported massive quantities of silkworms, hoping to rival the textile mills of Europe. They also heavily invested in the Pennsylvania and Ohio Canal, digging a massive trench directly through the center of the town to connect the river to the commercial markets of the East. If you were looking out this window in 1836, you would have seen a town exploding with wealth and frantic construction. And one of the people living right here, swept up in that massive economic boom, was a young, fiercely intense tanner named John Brown. Long before he became the legendary, uncompromising abolitionist who led the raid on Harper's Ferry and helped ignite the American Civil War, John Brown lived right here in Franklin Mills. He operated a tannery along the river, curing animal hides in the freezing water, and he borrowed heavily to speculate on the local land, believing the canal would make him a wealthy man. But the entire dream collapsed. The Panic of 1837, a massive national financial depression, wiped the town out overnight. The silkworms died in the freezing Ohio winters, the canal company went bankrupt, and the massive mills sat totally empty and silent. John Brown lost absolutely everything, plunging into deep poverty, an experience that fueled his radicalization and pushed him toward his destiny. For a decade, the town you are looking at right now was practically a ghost town, a muddy, failed experiment on the banks of the Cuyahoga. As the road ahead begins to widen and curve, we are transitioning onto Haymaker Parkway. This massive, sweeping bypass was built in the 1970s to funnel heavy traffic around the historic downtown grid, but it offers us an incredible elevated view of the city. Look Look out your passenger side window as we glide along the parkway. You can see the historic brick storefronts of downtown Kent nestled down in the valley, and you can see the massive heavy steel railroad bridges crossing directly over the water. Those railroad tracks are the exact reason this town survived its early collapse. In the 1850s, a visionary, stubborn local businessman named Marvin Kent decided that if the canals had failed, the future belonged to steam and iron. He wanted to build the Atlantic and Great Western Railroad directly through this valley. The project was considered impossible. The terrain was too rugged, the river gorge was too deep, and the financial backers constantly pulled their money. But Marvin Kent refused to quit. He poured his own fortune into the project, overcoming massive landslides, cholera outbreaks among the work crews, and endless political sabotage. Finally, in 1863, the first massive smoke-belching steam locomotive rolled right across the river, bringing massive wealth, heavy industry, and thousands of jobs back to the valley. The town was so incredibly grateful to Marvin Kent for single-handedly saving them from economic ruin that they officially changed the name of the city from Franklin Mills to Kent. As you look at the heavy steel rails cutting through the center of the city below us, you are looking at the iron spine that quite literally holds this community together. Finally, in 1863, the first massive smoke-belching steam locomotive rolled right across the river, bringing massive wealth, heavy industry, and thousands of jobs back to the valley. The town was so incredibly grateful to Marvin Kent for single-handedly saving them from economic ruin that they officially changed the name of the city from Franklin Mills to Kent. As you look at the heavy steel rails cutting through the center of the city below us, you are looking at the iron spine that quite literally holds this community together. We are sweeping along the parkway and the landscape is shifting again. We are making our way towards South Water Street. As we transition back onto State Route 43 heading south, the view out your windshield changes from historic industrial brick to a vibrant, sprawling, highly energetic landscape. You are now looking at the edges of Kent State University. Look at the massive modern architecture blending with the mid-century academic buildings on the rolling hills to your left. In 1910, this institution was founded as a small, humble, normal school, designed simply to train public school teachers for the rural districts of Northeast Ohio. Today, it is a massive world-class research university that absolutely dominates the culture, the economy, and the physical footprint of the city. The presence of those tens of thousands of students dictates the rhythm of the streets you are looking at. During the school year, these sidewalks are packed with young people. The local coffee shops are overflowing and the energy is incredibly vibrant and chaotic. But the relationship between this university and the nation is deeply, permanently scarred by history. As we drive past the edge of the campus, it is impossible not to think about the tragic, world-altering events of May 4, 1970. During a massive, tense protest against the expansion of the Vietnam War into Cambodia, the Ohio National Guard opened fire on a crowd of unarmed Kent State students, killing 4 and wounding 9. The crack of those rifles echoed across the entire globe, fundamentally shifting the American perspective on the war and leaving a profound, heavy legacy on this specific piece of ground. Today, the university embraces that heavy history, serving as a national center for the study of peace and conflict resolution. When you look at the rolling green hills of the campus, you are looking at a place that experienced unimaginable trauma but chose to rebuild itself into a monument of learning and remembrance. We are continuing to push south on Water Street, moving away from the dense, pedestrian-heavy center of the college town. The historic brick architecture and the quiet, tree-lined residential streets are slowly beginning to fade out, replaced by the unmistakable, highly functional architecture of modern American transit. Look at the storefronts as we pass the local sub-shops, the gas stations, and the auto repair garages. The road is widening, the traffic is moving faster, and the sky is opening up. You can feel the gravitational pull of the massive interstate highway system drawing us in. We are approaching the Interstate 76 interchange, one of the massive east-west concrete rivers that carry thousands of tons of freight and thousands of travelers across the country every single day. This specific stretch of road heading toward the highway represents a completely different era of American expansion. In the 1950s and 60s, as the federal government paved the interstate highway system, a massive, entirely new industry sprang up overnight right at the edge of the off-ramps. The American Motel. Before the interstates, travelers had to drive directly into the cramped, congested downtown centers to find a historic hotel. But the new highways created a demand for fast, convenient, highly standardized lodging where a weary driver could pull their massive, chrome-finned station wagon directly up to the door of their room. The landscape you're looking at right now, with its wide lanes and massive, towering signs designed to be read at 70 miles an hour, was engineered specifically for the automobile. In the late 1800s, a British immigrant named John Davy moved to Kent. He was a deeply passionate, eccentric man who looked at the aging, dying trees in the local cemeteries and parks and refused to accept that they simply had to rot and fall. He believed that trees were living, breathing organisms that could be medically treated, healed, and saved. People thought he was absolutely out of his mind, but John Davy grabbed his tools and went to work. He invented the entire science of tree surgery. He figured out how to prune massive branches safely, how to treat tree diseases, and how to fill decaying cavities in massive oak trees with cement to keep them standing for centuries. In 1880, he founded the Davy Tree Expert Company right here in Kent. He turned a wild, unproven idea into a massive global scientific enterprise. Today, that exact same company is still headquartered right here in this city, managing forests and landscapes across the entire continent. When you look at the towering maple and oak trees casting shadows across the roads of Kent, you are looking at the living legacy of a man who taught the world how to save them. But long before John Davy planted his trees, and long before Marvin Kent laid down his heavy iron railroad tracks, the ground you're looking at was the setting for one of the most famous violent legends of the American frontier. If you look back toward the deep, twisting gorge of the Cuyahoga River, you are looking at the site of Brady's Leap. In the 1780s, this entire valley was a highly contested, incredibly dangerous war zone between the expanding American frontier and the indigenous tribes who were fiercely defending their ancestral homeland. A famous frontiersman and scout named Captain Samuel Brady was operating in this area when he was ambushed by a large party of Native American warriors. Outnumbered and running for his life, Brady sprinted through the dense, dark forest, heading straight for the Cuyahoga River. But when he reached the edge, he realized he was trapped. He was standing on the edge of a massive, sheer cliff, looking down at the roaring rapids with the warriors closing in directly behind him. According to the legend, which has been passed down through generations of locals, Captain Brady did not surrender. He took a massive running start and literally leaped across the entire river gorge, a distance of over 22 feet, landing on the opposite rocky cliff. The jump was so incredibly impossible that his pursuers were stunned in disbelief. Brady managed to scramble away, eventually hiding in the freezing waters of a nearby lake, breathing through a hollow reed hidden under the lily pads until the search party finally gave up. Today, that body of water is still called Brady Lake, and the exact spot where he supposedly defied gravity is marked near the downtown River Walk. It is a wild, raw story that reminds us of just how brutal and untamed this river valley used to be. And finally, as you look at the functional, heavy commercial infrastructure right outside the window, you have to understand the sheer industrial muscle that completely sustained this town through the 20th century. While the railroad put Kent on the map, it was manufacturing that kept the lights on. In the early 1900s, a man named L.F. Gaugler started a small machine shop in town. By the time the Second World War erupted, the Gaugler Machine Company had exploded into a massive, sprawling industrial complex. This quiet college town completely shifted gears to support the war effort. Thousands of local men and women worked grueling, around-the-clock shifts in massive, deafeningly loud factories right here in Kent, manufacturing heavy munitions, massive artillery shells, and critical parts for the military. The wealth and the massive influx of workers from that industrial boom built the neighborhoods, paved the wide roads, and funded the schools that define the city today. So as you sit here looking out at the modern streetlights and the passing cars, realize that you are looking at a deeply layered, complex piece of Earth. From a violent frontier battleground to a hub of global botanical science to a heavy industrial powerhouse, This valley has constantly adapted, survived, and transformed. Enjoy the view and take in the quiet, enduring strength of the Tree City.